A new player has entered the game, and it's called the Willow Quantum Chip. It's Google's latest breakthrough in computing power. Now, the internet is ablaze with one question. Could this quantum machine destroy Bitcoin? And why stop there? What about higher value targets, central banks, Department of Defense, corporations, or more? Well, the headlines are terrifying. The debates online are pretty heated, and the stakes, well, of course, they're higher than ever. But what if I told you the truth is actually far more fascinating? In this video, I'm going to break down what Google Willow Chip really is. I'm going to talk about the potential risks that it poses to Bitcoin. If you're holding Bitcoin, should you be worried? And we're going to look at other infrastructure that's at risk as well. Now, real quick, my name is Mark Moss. I've been making Bitcoin content for over 8 years. I'm a Bitcoin-focused venture capital investor. And in this video, I'm going to share some of the same insights that I've learned and we use every single day. So let's go. All right, now I've been making content specifically for Bitcoin for now over 8 years. And if I had just $1 for every single time somebody told me, yeah, but quantum computing is going to destroy the whole thing, well, I'd probably have, enough to buy one whole Bitcoin. I've been asked that question a lot, and I would typically answer something like, yeah, well, what about aliens? They could come destroy the world tomorrow too. If you want to deal with hypotheticals, because there is no quantum computing, right? That's my typical answer. But the answer's changed because now quantum computing is here. So now, rather than having to answer some hypothetical in the future maybe threat like an asteroid destroying the Earth, now we have a real thing. So let's talk about that for a minute, because now let me answer this question for once and all, and then when people ask me, I'll send them the video. Okay, so introducing Google's new Willow chip. Like I said, the first real quantum computing that we've had, the first real threat we have to break encryption, including potentially Bitcoin's encryption. Okay, so first of all, they've been working on this on a long time. Google has basically cracked a 30-year challenge. They've been working on this for a really long time. Now, what quantum computing does is it allows computers to be way more powerful and allows them to process way more transactions. So if a computer was trying to guess a password, for example, like your typical 12-character password that might have one capital letter and one character, it could take a regular computer, I don't know, something like 35,000 years. But a quantum computer, because it could try so much faster, could break it in minutes, potentially. Okay, so they've been working on this for over 30 years. Now, what they've been able to do, the breakthrough that they've had, is as this quantum computer is processing transactions, it's able to reduce the errors, and because of that, they're able to scale these qubits. Okay, so this is sort of how they measure the speed and the processing power of these quantum computers. So this quantum computer is so fast, it could crack a code in about 5 minutes that would take a regular computer 10 septillion years. I don't even know what that is. 10 septillion years, which is 10 to the 25th power, or it basically looks like this. That many zeros, I haven't added them up. It's a really long time, 10 septillion years. So this is a really fast innovation that Google's been able to do. Okay, so the question is then, what will they do with this new power? And is it a threat to Bitcoin, and is it a threat to encryption overall? Let's break that down. So the first thing is, we have to understand that Bitcoin represents an entire shift in the way technology is built. You hear me talk about this regularly if you watch my videos, talking about the decentralized revolution. So what we have is that basically all of our databases, Experian, Amazon, your bank, the central bank, etc., they're all centralized databases. All the data sits in one central database, and it's controlled, it's protected by the cybersecurity team, versus Bitcoin has now introduced a decentralized database. And so really what we're witnessing is centralization versus decentralization. Now, besides the main aspect of one database versus many databases, we have different types of encryption. Well, let me just break down the centralized versus decentralized. So this is what's going on. The internet actually started as a very decentralized ecosystem. As a matter of fact, when I launched my first internet business back in 1999, I had to have a server in my office with my own servers with RAID, swappable hard drives, etc., because there was no Amazon cloud. There was nothing like that, so I had to run my own server. So at that time, the internet was very decentralized. Everybody ran their own database, right, and uploaded directly to the cloud. But since then, what's happened is the internet got very centralized. So now you log in with your Facebook ID or your Google ID. Everything sits on the Amazon cloud. Everything runs through our Gmail, our Google, right? And so everything got centralized. The problem with centralized systems is we see how they're prone to fraud, manipulation, also break-ins. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, what we can see is where we're at is centralized systems are now starting to go down for many reasons I'm going to break down for you. And we're starting to see the rise now of decentralized systems. And so there's going to be a massive paradigm shift that will happen over the next 25, 30 years. I talk about this quite often. But to break this down, again, centralized versus decentralized, again, so you have one database, your bank, Amazon, Experian, etc. And think of it like this. Like if you had $1 billion in one bank, that's a really big target. There's a lot of people that potentially break into that bank, try to crack the code of that bank to get that $1 billion. But if I had a billion banks with $1 each, what's the point? It's way too much work for me to go to each bank one by one and break into them to get $1 at a time, a billion times. I wouldn't do. Systems run a different type of encryption than Bitcoin. So first we'll talk about Bitcoin, then we'll get to the rest. So a couple ways to think about this. Encryption. So database encryption, your typical database, uses symmetric encryption algorithms like AES, for example, Advanced Encryption Standards. Now, Bitcoin uses different encryption. As a matter of fact, it uses two different types of encryption, and this is primarily uses asymmetric cryptography. All right, so there's elliptical curve, and there's SHA-256. Let me break those down for you just so you can understand. I'm not gonna go super deep into the weeds here. I wanna give you the base information so you can understand this and at least sound intelligent if you wanna have a conversation. And if you want, go research this. If you're a computer nerd, you can go research this a little bit more. Okay, so the first thing is there's different parts of the Bitcoin network itself. There's Bitcoin the network and there's Bitcoin the asset that moves on the network. And the Bitcoin network itself uses mining computers to process transactions. This is hashing, right? And then there's the transactions themselves, more of the nodes. We'll talk about that in a second. So the first is we have Bitcoin protocol, and it uses the SHA-256. You might have heard of this before. This is for all hashing operations. So for the Bitcoin mining, the processing computers, to process the transactions, they mark them as a hash that's now saved in time in this block for everyone to see. All right, this is what we call proof of work, a proof of work mechanism. In order for a miner to submit a block to the network, the hash of the block must be below a certain threshold. So it's basically trying to figure out this code, and if it gets that, then it will put that hash into the blockchain. All right, so for that, we're using SHA-256 encryption. All right, but we have another type of encryption as well, and this is for the signatory part. Okay, so for digital signatures and for Bitcoin, we use something else, and this is called a ECDSA, which is elliptical curve cryptography. Let me give you an analogy that maybe this will make sense for you. So with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, you never actually download a coin. What you think of is think of the blockchain, which is a database. Think of a blockchain database as a digital locker system. Okay, and so you have a public address of your locker, say C19, and I could say, hey, would you go to my locker and slide that envelope into my locker for me? So I've given you my public address of the locker, C19. You can go and put something into the locker. Everybody can see the locker. Everybody knows there's C19 right there. But then I have a private key where I could open the locker and get that envelope out, and I can go put it into another one. And that's basically the way the blockchain database works as well. So we have a public address that everybody can see, and we can hash into those, and people can see transactions from them. It's open, it's transparent. But then I have the private key to then move Bitcoin from one wallet address to another wallet address. And so that's what we're talking about. So in order to move that Bitcoin, I have to sign it. I have to give it my digital signature, and we're using a signature algorithm. This is the elliptical curve. And this allows a private key to sign any type of message. Digital signatures are frequently used to sign transactions and to send the Bitcoin, okay? So that's how it works. Now, this signature is published to the blockchain so that any member of the Bitcoin network can verify. It's transparent. So anyone can see this. We say, don't trust, verify. Any member can verify that the signature, the public key, and the message match. So now we can achieve consensus. The whole network can agree that this happened because it's visible. Bitcoin is purely peer-to-peer, so it's moving from one wallet address to another, from my wallet to your wallet directly without going through an intermediary. Although miners process each transaction, they're unable to produce the valid signature for other people's Bitcoin. So the miners are able to put the hash in the blockchain, but then you with your private key can sign that transaction to complete it. So those are the two different types of encryption, and they are very difficult to crack. Let me give you a visual way this works. So this is private knowledge right here. So this is the private key. Only I would have the key to open my locker, C19. And in those early messages, we can see that Satoshi actually envisioned something like this happening and becoming a problem. So we can see here on the message board, Satoshi, a founding senior member. This message is June 14th of 2010. So at that time, when Bitcoin was just coming out, being introduced, they already were asking, but what about quantum computing? The same question I've been asked, whatever, 100,000 times. Now, at the time, they didn't have quantum computing, but here's what Satoshi said. He said that SHA-256, remember the Bitcoin hashing, encryption, SHA-256 is very strong. He said it's not like the incremental step from MD5 to SHA-1. It can last several decades. This is in 2010, he said that. Unless there's some massive breakthrough attack, which there hasn't been. If SHA-256 became completely broken, which potentially could happen with Willow, and I'm going to tell you what that time frame looks like. If it becomes completely broken, we could come to some agreement about what the honest blockchain was before the trouble started, and then we could continue from there. If the hash breakdown came gradually, so at this point it's coming gradually, again, I'll give you that time frame in a minute. If it comes gradually, which it is, we could then transition to a new hash in a orderly way. So already in 2010, they were being asked, what about quantum computing? And they said, hey, well, cool. When we have quantum computing that could break this encryption, then we can also use it to create a new encryption style. You see, so he was already predicting this, and so these developers were already thinking about this. Now let's talk about the time frame. So the main takeaway is, one, they started to think about this right away. Number two, Bitcoin as this decentralized technology was designed to evolve. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 100 years, the next 1,000